The cold night wind blew across the quiet colony fields. Clouds covered the stars, and a soft fog rolled in from the nearby forest. Everything was still, except for a strange sound. It was not a bird. It was not a machine. It was a low, painful cry that made even the air feel heavy. Jalen, a human farmer, had just finished putting out the fire in his small cabin. He was tired after a long day of working the fields. But that strange cry made him freeze. It came again, closer. This time, it was weak, like something big was hurt. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The wind was sharp, but the sound was clearer now that he followed it with slow steps, moving through the thick mist. His boots sank into the wet soil, and the world around him looked like a dream. Then, near the edge of the forest, he saw something lying on the ground. His heart stopped that it was not an animal he knew. It was large, much larger than any wolf or dog. Its body was covered in dark, silver-like scales that shimmered even in the low light. There were deep wounds across its back. Thick blood, dark blue in color, slowly leaked out. Its breathing was rough, and one of its legs seemed broken. Jalen could have turned away. He should have called for help. But something about the creature's eyes kept him there. They were yellow, glowing faintly, but full of pain, and fear that he moved closer, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. The beast watched him but didn't growl. It didn't try to run or attack. It just lay there, shaking. Jalen knelt beside it. "You're hurt," he whispered. "I don't know what you are, but I won't leave you like this." He pulled off his jacket and covered the creature's side. The body was hot, burning even through the cloth. He quickly checked the wounds. Some were deep, like from sharp metal. Others looked like burns. Whatever had attacked this beast wanted it dead. Jalen made a choice. He ran back to his cabin, grabbed his medkit and some clean cloth. When he returned, the beast was still there, barely moving. He worked fast. His hands trembled as he cleaned the wounds, wrapping them tightly. The beast flinched once, but made no sound. It allowed him to help. "You're a fighter," Jalen said, tying the last bandage. "That's good, but you need more than this. You won't survive the cold out here." He had no idea how he carried it, but somehow, with all his strength, Jalen dragged the creature back to his barn. It took nearly an hour. He laid the beast on a pile of soft hay, made a small fire nearby to warm the air, and placed bowls of water and food close to its mouth. The beast looked at him once before. Closing its eyes, Jalen sat beside it for a while, watching it breathe. "What are you?" he asked quietly. "Where did you come from?" But the only answer was the sound of the wind outside. As the night grew darker, Jalen didn't sleep. His mind was full of questions. He had never seen such a creature before. Was it dangerous? Was it intelligent? Could it speak? And most important, was someone looking for it? He remembered the stories. Stories about rich aliens, barons, lords, and baronesses who kept strange and rare pets. Sometimes they were more than pets. Sometimes they were protectors, trained for battle, bonded with their masters. Jalen looked at the sleeping beast. If it belonged to one of those nobles, then keeping it might bring danger to his home. But he couldn't just throw it out to die. The beast stirred. It let out a soft cry, not of pain, but of sadness. It was alone, lost, like it had no place to go. Jalen's heart tightened. He placed his hand gently on the beast's head. The skin was rough but warm. The creature didn't move away. It just breathed slowly. "I don't know what's going to happen," Jalen whispered, "but you're safe here. For now." Outside, the wind howled through the trees. The fog grew thicker, and far away, deep in the stars, a royal ship changed direction, heading straight toward the colony. But Jalen didn't know that. He only knew that something broken had come to him in the mist, and he had chosen to save it. The morning light touched the edge of the barn, breaking through the wooden gaps and warming the cold floor. Jalen opened the barn door slowly, half expecting the creature to be gone, or worse, angry. But what he saw made him stop and stare. The beast was still there, curled up in the hay like a sleeping animal. Its giant chest moved up and down slowly. The bandages were stained, but it was alive. And more surprising than that, it was calm. Jalen stepped closer, his boots crunching on dry straw. The creature's eyes opened, glowing faint yellow in the dim light. They focused on him, but did not flash with anger. No growl, no sign of threat, just quiet watching. "You're still here," Jalen whispered. I didn't dream you. He carefully placed a bowl of water beside the beast. It sniffed the air and slowly leaned forward, lapping at the water with a thick, forked tongue. It was awkward, like it wasn't used to drinking this way, but it trusted Jalen enough to do it in front of him. Jalen watched in silence, amazed. This thing could easily break through the barn wall and run, or attack him, but it didn't. It stayed. It accepted his help. I guess I'll call you Iron Paw, Jalen said with a small smile. You look like a creature made of metal and storms. The beast blinked, as if hearing and remembering the name. Later that day, Jalen went into town. He needed more supplies, more cloth, herbs, and food. He kept quiet about what he had found, but the people were already talking. You hear that scream in the forest last night? Something big. Out there, saw huge tracks near the river. Better not go out after dark. My dog's still missing. Jalen stayed quiet, bought what he needed, and returned before sunset. He didn't want anyone following him. Not yet. Not when Iron Paw was still healing. That night, while checking the wounds again, he noticed something strange. On the side of the beast's neck, just under a layer of scale, something glowed. Faint but sharp, a mark. Jalen leaned in. It was not a wound. It was a symbol, a circle with sharp edges and a long line running through it. Like a crest, a brand. Jalen whispered. Or a royal seal? He sat back, heart now racing. The stories of noble houses returned to his mind. Some powerful aliens bred war beasts, pets that could tear through stone, creatures they loved and guarded more than gold. And if one went missing, they would burn cities to find it. Jalen stared at Iron Paw. Who do you belong to? He whispered. The beast looked back at him, not with fear or confusion, but with a strange, quiet understanding. It seemed to know what Jalen was feeling, and somehow, it didn't care about the past. It was focused only on the human in front of it. That same night, as the stars blinked above the dark sky, Jalen woke to the sound of movement outside. He got up, heart pounding, and peered through the window. In the distance, across the field, a light flickered. Not fire, not lantern. It was a hovercraft, military design. Jalen ducked low. His cabin was too far from the main village to be part of a patrol, and he knew no one rich enough to own a craft like that, which meant only one thing. They were searching. He returned to the barn quietly. Iron Paw was awake, eyes glowing brighter. The beast stood up slowly, legs stronger now, and moved toward the door. Stay, Jalen whispered. They can't find you yet. Iron Paw tilted its head and sat. Back down. It listened. It obeyed. Jalen felt a chill run down his spine. This was not a wild creature. This was something trained, disciplined, loyal, but now to him. He lit a small fire to keep the barn warm and sat beside Iron Paw again. I don't know what I've done, he whispered, but I think I've stolen something that belongs to someone dangerous. Iron Paw rested its head on his leg. Heavy, warm, trusting. Outside, the patrol moved past his land without stopping. But the search had begun, and far away, across the galaxy, a cold and powerful voice gave a single order: find my pet. Bring me its thief. Alive. The royal hunt begins aboard a dark, silent cruiser floating beyond the moon of Kirill. 4. Baroness Varela stood like a statue. Her long black robes shimmered under the low light. Her silver crown, shaped like blades, sat sharp upon her head. Around her feet, soldiers knelt, not daring to raise their eyes. Her voice, when it came, was like ice cracking through steel. You failed to secure my bondbeast. That is not a mistake I forgive. The command hall felt colder than before. The captain, a seasoned war officer, swallowed hard. My lady, he said, bowing deeper. We believe the creature fell from the cargo bay during the storm over the human colony. Our scouts are now sweeping the area. Not fast enough, Varela snapped. Ironclaw is not just a beast. He is soulbound to me. My heart aches with his pain. If he is dead, I'll salt that colony to dust. If he is stolen, her eyes flashed red. Then someone has chosen death. Her guards rushed out, and within minutes, the great ship descended toward the outer edges of the planet, toward the small colony where a certain human farmer still lived in peace, unaware of the storm he had brought upon himself. Back on the colony, Jalen had started to build a routine. Each day, he would bring food and water to Iron Paw. The creature was healing fast, too fast. Cuts that should take weeks to close were already gone. Bones that were broken now held. Wait. But it wasn't just the body that was healing. Ironpaw had started watching Jalen with quiet, strange attention. It followed his movements, copied small gestures. When Jalen whistled, it tried to make the same sound. It was learning, not like a pet, but like a student. One morning, while pouring water into the bowl, Jalen said, "You're not just an animal, are you?" Ironpaw tilted its head. "You were trained," he continued. "You respond to words, to tone. Someone taught you. And that mark on your neck, it's not just a scar." He reached toward the spot again. This time, the skin under the scales pulsed softly. A projection shot into the air, a small blue image, like a memory trapped in light. Jalen stepped back. The projection showed a tall, armored woman kneeling before a younger Ironpaw. She placed her hand on its head and said words in a strange language. But Jalen could understand one thing from the tone. It was a vow. The image vanished. Jalen stood in silence. "She loved you," he whispered. "Did she lose you? Or did you escape?" Ironpaw looked away. That same day, patrols returned to the village. This time, they wore full armor. Silver suits, black visors, weapons humming with quiet power. They walked from house to house, showing a picture. It was Ironpaw. "Have you seen this creature?" One soldier asked an old man. "It's a bonded beast. Escaped from a royal ship. The Baroness wants it returned, alive." No one in the village had seen it. Or at least, they said so. But when two soldiers reached Jalen's property, Ironpaw sensed them before the knock came. It growled low, body tense. Jalen quickly pulled it behind the barn and covered the entrance. With wood panels. When the soldiers knocked, Jalen met them calmly. "You live alone?" one asked. "Yes," Jalen lied. "Strange readings from this area. Possible large life form. You seen anything?" "Just the usual cattle. Maybe a wild beast came close." They scanned the barn but didn't go inside. One soldier paused, as if sensing something. He stared at Jalen for a long second. Then he said, "If you see anything, don't touch it. Don't feed it. Just report it. Touching royal property can be seen as theft. Or worse, bond disruption." Jalen nodded. "Understood." They left. He waited until their hovercraft disappeared over the hills. Then he opened the barn again. Ironpaw stepped out, shaking with quiet rage. "You stayed hidden," Jalen said. "You knew they were yours." The beast didn't move. Jalen placed a hand on its shoulder. "Why don't you want to go back?" Ironpaw looked at him, and for the first time, it made a sound. A low, broken hum. Sad. Lonely. Jalen understood. "You're not just lost," he whispered. "You were running." That night, Jalen didn't sleep. He kept a fire going in the barn, and Ironpaw curled near it like a silent guard. The bond between them had changed. No longer just rescue and care, it was now something deeper. A trust. And, while they sat in silence, a new sound filled the sky. One that shook the land. The royal cruiser had arrived. The Baroness had come to reclaim what was hers. But Ironpaw was no longer hers alone. The soldiers warning the sky turned silver as the Baroness's cruiser hovered above the colony. Its shadow swallowed the sunlight, and the villagers stood frozen, watching the ship lower like a beast of metal and smoke. No one dared speak. No one moved. This wasn't a visit. It was a warning from the stars. Jalen stood near the edge of his field, heart pounding. He had heard of royal visits before, but never seen one. The sight of the cruiser filled his chest with dread. Inside his barn, Ironpaw stood still, tense, his golden eyes never blinking. The creature could sense her. She was here. Troops poured from the ship. Rows of tall, black-armored soldiers spread across the village like waves. They didn't ask, they commanded. Doors were kicked in. Homes were searched. And at the front of it all was a single figure in a flowing black robe and silver armor, Baroness Varela. She didn't look angry. She looked calm. And that was far worse. Later that afternoon, two soldiers arrived at Jalen's cabin. They were not like the scouts from before. These were the crest of the royal house on their chest plates. They didn't knock. They walked in like they already owned the place. "You're the human farmer?" one asked coldly. "Yes," Jalen replied, standing his ground. "We're searching all outlying homes. There is a royal beast missing. The Baroness has reason to believe it's alive and nearby." Jalen pretended to look confused. "A beast?" The other soldier stepped forward. His visor gleamed as he slowly walked around the room. "The creature is dangerous," he said. "It's not just a pet. It's soul bonded to the Baroness. If another being touches it, feeds it, or heals it, the bond can begin to shift. Jalen's hands tensed. And when that happens, the soldier continued, the Baroness considers it a threat to her bloodline. And threats are erased. The first soldier turned. You hear anything? Strange cries at night? Heavy footsteps. Jalen shook his head. Only the wind and my old fence groaning. They stared at him for a long time. Be careful, human, one of them said before walking out. Some things are too big to hide forever. Jalen closed the door slowly after they left. His breath shook as he turned back to the barn. Iron Paw was no longer lying down. He stood tall, watching through the cracks of the wall. He had heard every word. They're not giving up, Jalen whispered. They'll search everything. Iron Paw stepped forward. He moved better now, stronger. The wounds were almost gone. The glow on his neck, the Baroness's crest, was dimming. Jalen stepped closer. You're not hers anymore, are you? Iron Paw pressed his head gently against Jalen's chest. A soft hum echoed between them, like a song without words. Jalen didn't need to understand alien languages to know what it meant. Loyalty, not forced. Chosen. That night, the village burned. Not all of it. Just one house. An older man, one who had joked about hearing giant footsteps the week before, had spoken too much. The soldiers came, dragged him from his bed, and burned his home. No charges. No warning. The villagers gathered, shaking with fear. The Baroness stood beside the fire, calm as ever. Let this be clear, she said loudly. I will have what is mine. I will burn this colony from root to sky if I must. The beast answers only to me. If it bonds with another, it dies. If that other is you, any of you, you die with it. Then she turned and left. No one followed her. Jalen stayed in the crowd, heart thudding. Iron Paw stood beside him, cloaked in darkness, unseen. They had no more time. That night, as Jalen packed supplies and food, Iron Paw watched him with glowing eyes. We can't stay, Jalen said softly. They'll come back. They'll search the barn. They'll search everything. Iron Paw moved toward him, and something happened. The mark on the beast's neck pulsed again, brighter this time. And, for a single moment, Jalen saw something. Not a memory, but a vision. A cold palace. A woman, Varela, kneeling beside a young Iron Paw. She wasn't cruel in that moment. She was kind, gentle. She whispered something as she placed her hand on the beast's head. Then the vision shifted. The same woman screaming. Soldiers chasing the creature. A cage. Pain. Jalen fell back, gasping. Iron Paw nuzzled him gently. You ran, Jalen whispered. You ran away from her. Iron Paw gave a soft hum in reply. The fire from the burning house still lit the sky outside. The villagers hid behind their doors, silent. But Jalen knew what he had to do now. He wasn't just hiding a beast. He was protecting a soul, one that had chosen him over a queen. And the queen was coming. The Baroness arrives. The sky turned dark before nightfall, not from clouds, but from the monstrous shadow of the Baroness's flagship. It hovered silently above the colony like a bird of death. Engines pulsed with power, yet it made no sound. It didn't need to. Its silence was more terrifying than any thunder. Inside the village, no one moved. No doors opened. No. Children cried. Everyone waited, holding their breath. Then she came. Baroness Varela stepped out of her craft, her long silver cloak trailing behind her like a blade cutting through the dust. Her face was hidden beneath a jeweled mask, but her presence said everything. This world was now under her will. Behind her marched her elite guards, black-armored, faceless, and taller than most humans. They moved in perfect formation. No hesitation. No mercy. Jalen watched from the hills beyond his land. He had taken Iron Paw to a cave hidden behind the forest, far from the patrol paths. The beast followed him without chains, without fear. It didn't growl. It didn't speak. But its eyes were fixed on the ship, on her. It knew she was near. From afar, Jalen saw her stop in the center of the village square. The villagers stood before her, heads down. Varela raised one hand, and a blue hologram appeared in the air. It showed Iron Paw, whole, majestic, armored. Not broken, not wounded. This, she said, her voice cold and sharp, is not an animal. This is a royal bondbeast. It was created through blood, vow, and fire. It is mine. Her voice grew stronger. It escaped. Someone has taken it. That someone has broken royal law. that someone will pay in fire unless my companion is returned. No. One spoke. Varella's eyes scanned the crowd. The creature is soul-linked to me. If it has chosen another, then it has been corrupted. And if it has bonded with a human, she paused. Her tone dropped lower, full of hate. Then both must be destroyed. Her words cut through the air like a sword. And Jalen, watching from far away, felt a chill crawl down his spine. He looked at Iron Paw, who now growled softly, not in fear, but in defiance. Later that night, 2 more patrols swept across the outer farms. They knocked on every door, broke open barns, scanned for life forms. Jalen was readied. He had moved Iron Paw to the deeper part of the cave. He left behind faint tracks in the opposite direction, leading toward the river. It was a trap, one he hoped would work. And for now, it did. The soldiers followed the false trail. Back in the cave, Jalen lit a small lantern. Its glow bounced off the stone walls and onto Iron Paw's body. The beast now stood tall, completely healed. The scales on his shoulders shimmered like steel under firelight. His eyes, once soft and unsure, now burned with a deep, golden light. "You're not running anymore," Jalen whispered. Iron Paw moved forward and lowered his head to Jalen's level. He placed a single claw gently on Jalen's chest, right over his heart. A pulse. A soft light. Jalen felt warmth flow into him. Not pain, not energy, but something else. A connection. Something ancient. Something alive. "What was that?" he asked, breathing hard. The beast said nothing. But Jalen understood. Iron Paw had bonded with him. A true bond, and no words. No contract. No rituals. Just choice. Back in the village, the Baroness felt it. She stumbled forward slightly, grabbing her chest. The connection, the pull that once tied her soul to the beast, was breaking. Fading. "No," she whispered. Her guards rushed toward her, but she waved them off. "No," she screamed. He chose another. A human. The ground shook beneath her feet. The ship trembled in the air. Her rage cracked through the sky. She looked toward the hills, toward the forest. "Find him," she said to her captain. "Find the human. Bring me his head." At the same time, Jalen stood in the cave, his hand still over his chest where Iron Paw had touched him. "I think I understand now," he said softly. "You're not just a beast. You were born for someone's command. But now, you've chosen your own path." Iron Paw nodded slowly. Jalen looked out of the cave and saw the searchlights dancing across the sky. The hunt was growing closer. "They're not going to stop," he said. "Not until one of us is dead." He looked at Iron Paw. "Then we make our stand." For the first time, Iron Paw let out a roar, not of pain, not of fear, but of power, and somewhere far above, on her dark ship, the Baroness heard it and knew. The beast was no longer hers. A bond beyond blood. The stars burned cold above the forest. As the Baroness's ships circled the sky like vultures, spotlights cut through the trees. Drones buzzed in the air, scanning every shadow, every stone, every breath. But deep inside the mountain cave, something older than law, older than royalty, had just been born. Jalen stood in silence, one hand still pressed to his chest. His heart beat differently now. He could feel it, like it echoed in 2 bodies. One pulse, 2 souls. His eyes met Iron Paw's, and for a long moment, they simply existed together. No master, no servant, no fear. "You chose me," Jalen whispered. Iron Paw let out a soft growl, low and warm. It wasn't just agreement. It was promise. But outside, that promise was already being tested. The Baroness was no longer calm. Her guards had never seen her rage like this. She stood in her command chamber, fists shaking. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with betrayal. "Bring me the creature," she hissed. "I want the traitor bound in chains. I want that human's voice silenced forever." A young officer approached, nervous. "My lady, the life signature. Match confirms it. The bond has shifted. The beast has completed a new soul link with the human." Silence. Then, crashed up. Varella's blade flew across the room, splitting a control console in half. "He stole from me," she shouted. "He tore a part of my soul and made it his." She turned, eyes glowing red with fury. "Prepare the ground. Forces. If I cannot reclaim the bond, I will destroy it. Burn the forest. Level the colony. And when I stand over the beast's ashes, I will know peace." The night lit up as fire rained from the sky. Explosions shook the forest floor. Trees burst into flames. Creatures scattered. Drones scanned everything, and marching behind them were rows of armored soldiers with plasma rifles. Jalen and Ironpaw stood at the cave's mouth, watching the horror unfold below. "They're coming," Jalen said, gripping the weapon he'd carried since the early colony days, a simple pulse rifle, old but reliable. Ironpaw stepped forward. He didn't hide. He didn't crouch. He stood, tall, like a warrior returning to a battlefield. His scales reflected the firelight. His eyes burned gold. Jalen turned to him. "We can run. Maybe escape to the North Valley." Ironpaw didn't move. He looked at Jalen, and in that moment, Jalen understood. Ironpaw wasn't running anymore. This was home now. This was his choice, and he would fight for it. The first wave of drones reached the cave. Before Jalen could lift his rifle, Ironpaw leapt. The beast moved like lightning. Metal claws slashed through steel. Sparks flew. Drones dropped like broken stars. Not a single one escaped. More came. Troops landed nearby, their boots slamming into the ground. They fired toward the cave, beams slicing through stone. Jalen ducked, returned fire. Ironpaw roared, then charged, body glowing with energy. Like a storm given form that he crashed into the soldiers, scattering them like leaves. They fired at him, but their weapons barely scratched his scales. From the cruiser above, the Baroness watched it all unfold. She clenched her jaw. "He protects him," she whispered. One of her advisors dared to speak. "He's no longer a beast, my lady. The bond has changed him." Varela narrowed her eyes. "No, it has awakened him." On the battlefield, Jalen ran beside Ironpaw, heart racing. The forest around them blazed. Soldiers came in waves, but Ironpaw shielded Jalen at every step. When they surrounded them, Ironpaw let out a pulse, a shockwave that knocked the enemies to their knees. Jalen had never seen anything like it. "You were made for war," he said through heavy breath. Ironpaw looked back, and for a second, there was sadness in his eyes. Yes, he was made for war, but never given the choice. Until now. The final assault came fast. Varela herself descended from her ship, stepping through the smoke and flames like a goddess of destruction. Her armor shone. Her blade crackled with ancient power. She walked straight toward them, her soldiers staying back. Jalen raised his rifle, but Ironpaw stopped him with a low growl. "This is between them," Jalen whispered. The Baroness stood just a few feet away. Now, she looked at Ironpaw, not with love, not with command, but with heartbreak. "You were mine," she said softly. "You were born in my halls, fed from my hand, raised beside me. I gave you my heart." Ironpaw growled. "You chose a farmer?" she hissed. "A weak, nameless human?" She raised her blade. Ironpaw roared. And then, it moved. Not to kill, but to protect. He stepped in front of Jalen, eyes locked with the Baroness's. She raised her blade high, but her hands trembled, because deep in her soul, the bond was gone. And she felt it. She couldn't hurt him now, not because she lacked the power, but because for the first time in her life, she understood. You cannot force loyalty, and love cannot be stolen back. Her blade dropped. She stepped back, and the war stopped, for now. A choice of power smoke curled through the forest like a wounded ghost. Fires burned low in the distance, lighting the charred battlefield with a fading orange glow. Soldiers stood frozen. Drones hovered, waiting. The Baroness, once feared, once untouchable, lowered her blade and stared at the creature she had once called hers. Ironpaw stood unmoving, his massive body between her and the human farmer. The air pulsed with tension. A choice had been made, but the consequences of that choice had not yet fallen. Baroness Varela stepped forward, slow and deliberate, every eye watching her. "You don't understand what you've done," she said, her voice trembling, not with rage this time, but with something far rarer, disbelief. Jalen stepped up beside Ironpaw. He looked tired, covered in ash and dirt, but his voice was steady. "No," he said. "I think I do." He chose. Varela's eyes narrowed. "You're a farmer. A nobody. You live in dirt. What could you offer him that I could not?" Jalen looked at Ironpaw, who now sat like a calm guardian, golden eyes reflecting the starlight. "Above, I gave him something you never did," Jalen replied quietly. "Freedom." The words hit harder than any weapon. For a moment, the battlefield felt like a sacred place. The soldiers didn't move. Even the wind seemed to wait. The Baroness turned her gaze back to Ironpaw. Her fingers twitched at her side. "We were bound in blood," she whispered. "You were made from my DNA, shaped by my family's rights, tied to me with soul fire." Ironpaw blinked slowly, and then stepped forward. He bowed his head to her, not in submission, but in respect. She flinched. Then he turned and walked back to Jalen, standing tall beside the man he had chosen. The Baroness stared at the two of them. For the first time in her long life, her power meant nothing. She had lost. And worse, she understood why. She turned to her guards. "Stand down," she commanded. "This bond cannot be broken." One of the captains stepped forward. "Shall we capture the beast, my lady?" "No," she said softly. "We'd only destroy ourselves trying." She walked away, slowly, her boots crunching over scorched leaves. The cruiser's engines roared back to life. Within minutes, the ship rose from the earth and disappeared into the sky, swallowed by stars. The silence that followed was deep and heavy. Jalen looked around. Soldiers retreated. Drones shut down. The war had ended not with death, but with a decision. Ironpaw let out a long breath and finally relaxed. He looked up at Jalen, who dropped his rifle and knelt beside him. "You're free now," Jalen said. "Truly." But Ironpaw stayed by his side, because freedom didn't mean leaving. It meant choosing where to stay. In the weeks that followed, the colony began to heal. The villagers, once afraid to speak Jalen's name, now nodded with respect when he passed. He had stood against a Baroness and lived, but Jalen didn't care for fame. That he repaired his cabin, planted new crops, and every evening, Ironpaw walked the edge of the field, watching the stars point. One night, as Jalen sat on the porch, he looked over at his companion. "You could go anywhere now," he said. "Any world, any sky." Ironpaw walked over and rested his massive head near Jalen's feet. The message was clear.